The average person living in Okinawa, Japan, moves in a way most of us stopped doing decades ago. And that movement pattern done for just 7 minutes each morning correlates with joints that function like they belong to someone 20 years younger. We're not talking about gym sessions or equipment. We're talking about floor-based transitions, breath-synchronized stretches, and weight shifts so gentle they look effortless. Yet, when researchers track the health outcomes of people who maintain these patterns past 60, the data reveals something startling. Lower fall rates, better glucose regulation, reduced chronic pain, and a kind of physical confidence that medication simply cannot buy. Here's what they don't tell you. The Western fitness model built around isolated muscle work and cardio intervals misses the single most important variable for longevity after 60. Integrated movement. Movement that asks your hips, spine, shoulders, and ankles to cooperate in sequences your body remembers from childhood but abandoned somewhere around middle age. The Japanese approach to senior movement isn't about strength in the conventional sense. It's about restoring patterns that keep your nervous system calm, your fascia hydrated, and your balance systems sharp. And the 6 movements you're about to learn have been refined over centuries in a culture where staying mobile into your 90s isn't exceptional. It's expected. Now, I'm going to walk you through these 6 movements in order of simplicity. The first 3 you can start today, even if you haven't touched the floor in years. The 4th and 5th add a challenge that wakes up systems most people assume are too far gone to recover. And the 6th, the one practiced by the oldest residents of the Blue Zones every single morning, takes less than 90 seconds but has been linked to cardiovascular resilience that rivals moderate aerobic exercise. We'll cover exactly how to perform each one, the common mistakes that turn a helpful movement into a risky one, and the modifications that let you progress at your own pace without fear. Before we go further, drop a comment with your age and where you're watching from. I want to know who's ready to move differently today. Let's start with the first movement, and it's simpler than you think. In Japan, this practice is called Seiza, which translates to proper sitting. You kneel on the floor, shins flat, and lower your hips onto your heels. Your spine stays long. Your hands rest on your thighs, and you breathe slowly through your nose. Most Westerners can't hold this position for more than 30 seconds without knee pain or foot numbness. But in traditional Japanese homes, people sit this way multiple times a day, often for minutes at a stretch, well into their 80s. The position does something crucial. It mobilizes your ankles, loads your knee joints in a controlled range, and activates the small stabilizers in your hips that standard chair sitting completely shuts off. Why does this matter for you? When you spend decades in chairs and couches, the tissues around your ankles stiffen. Your knees lose tolerance for flexion. Your hip flexors shorten. The result is a movement system that becomes fragile and reactive. You stand up too fast and your blood pressure drops. You step off a curb and your ankle wobbles. You kneel to pick something up and your knee screams. Seiza reverses that cascade because it trains your lower body to handle load in a deep, stable position. And it does so without impact, without weight, and without the kind of strain that leads to injury. Research from institutions studying aging populations in Japan consistently shows that people who maintain floor-based sitting and standing habits have significantly lower rates of hip fractures and knee replacements compared to populations that rely exclusively on chairs. The mechanism isn't mysterious. Use it or lose it applies to joint range just as much as it applies to muscle. When your knees never flex past 90 degrees, the cartilage in the back of the joint starts to thin. When your ankles never dorsiflex under load, the tendons around them lose elasticity. Seiza keeps those ranges alive. Let me tell you about Margaret, 72, a retired librarian from Ohio. She came to me after her doctor told her she'd need a knee replacement within 2 years. Her knees hurt going downstairs, getting out of the car, even standing from a restaurant booth. I asked her when she last knelt on the floor. She laughed and said probably not since her kids were babies. We started with 30 seconds of supported Seiza, using a folded blanket under her hips to reduce the angle. She did it twice a day, morning and evening, always on carpet. Within 2 weeks, she noticed her knees felt looser when she woke up. Within 6 weeks, she was kneeling in her garden without bracing herself on the fence. Within 3 months, her orthopedist moved her surgery discussion to a wait-and-see file. Margaret still does Seiza every morning. Now, for 2 full minutes, no props. Her knees aren't perfect, but they're functional, and that functionality came from a movement pattern most people wrote off as impossible. Here's how you do it safely. Start with a thick cushion or folded yoga blanket behind your knees. Kneel down slowly, using a chair or wall for support if needed. Sit back onto the cushion so your full weight isn't on your heels yet. Keep your spine tall, shoulders relaxed. Breathe slowly, in through your nose for 4 counts, out through your nose for 6 counts. Stay for 30 seconds, then use your hands to push yourself forward onto all fours and stand up carefully. Do this twice a day. Every week, reduce the height of the cushion slightly. Your goal is to eventually sit directly on your heels with no support, but that might take 3 months, or 6 months, or a year. The timeline doesn't matter. The consistent practice does. If your knees hurt sharply, stop and add more cushion. If your feet go numb, come up sooner and massage your arches afterward. If your ankles feel too stiff, practice standing calf stretches against a wall for 1 minute before you attempt Seiza. The movement is forgiving if you respect your current range and build gradually. Now here's the kicker. Seiza isn't just about your knees. The upright posture it demands activates your deep core stabilizers, the transverse abdominis and multifidus, which support your lower back far better than any crunch or plank. And the nasal breathing pattern you maintain while holding the position stimulates your parasympathetic nervous system, dropping your heart rate and signaling your body that it's safe to relax. So you're training joint mobility, core stability, and nervous system regulation all at once in a position that requires zero equipment and fits into the 2 minutes you spend waiting for your coffee to brew. Which brings us to the second movement, and this one addresses the single most common complaint among people over 60, lower back stiffness. In Japan, this stretch is called neko-neko undu, which means cat-cow exercise, though it predates the yoga terminology Westerners borrowed by centuries. You start on your hands and knees, wrists under shoulders, knees under hips. You inhale and let your belly drop toward the floor, lifting your chest and gaze. You exhale and round your spine toward the ceiling, tucking your chin to your chest. You flow between these two shapes slowly, matching the movement to your breath for 1 to 2 minutes. This movement does something most static stretches cannot. It creates segmental motion through your thoracic and lumbar spine. Every vertebra in your back is designed to move, but modern life locks most of them in a single forward hunched position. Driving, typing, reading, eating, all of it pushes your spine into flexion. Over years, the muscles along your spine forget how to extend, and the discs between your vertebrae start to dehydrate because they rely on movement to pump fluid in and out. The result is stiffness that feels structural but is actually functional. Your spine can still move. It's just been stuck in one position so long it forgot. How studies on spinal health in aging populations consistently find that people who perform daily spinal flexion and extension movements report significantly less chronic back pain than those who rely on static stretching or medication alone. The reason is simple. Your spine needs motion to stay healthy. The discs between your vertebrae don't have direct blood supply. They get nutrients through a process called imbibition, which is essentially a pumping action created by alternating compression and decompression. When you move your spine through cat-cow, you're literally feeding your discs. Let me tell you about Robert, 68, a retired mechanic from Colorado. He'd had lower back pain for 15 years, the kind that made him shuffle in the morning and wince when he bent to tie his shoes. He'd tried physical therapy, chiropractic adjustments, muscle relaxers, even a lumbar epidural injection. Nothing gave him more than a few weeks of relief. I asked him to show me how he stretched. He leaned forward and tried to touch his toes, grimacing. I asked him if he ever moved his spine in any direction except forward. He looked at me like I'd spoken another language. We started with 1 minute of cat-cow every morning, right after he got out of bed. I told him to move so slowly it felt boring, to focus only on his breath, and to imagine each vertebrae moving one at a time like a wave. Within 1 week, he woke up without the usual stiffness. Within 3 weeks, he was working in his garage without the heating pad he'd relied on for years. Within 2 months, he told me his back felt better than it had in a decade. Robert still does cat-cow every day, sometimes twice a day, and he's added Seiza into his evening routine. His pain didn't vanish completely, but it dropped from a daily 7 out of 10 to an occasional 2 out of 10, and that shift gave him his life back. Here's your protocol. Get on your hands and knees on a carpet or yoga mat. If your wrists hurt, place your forearms on the ground instead, or make fists and balance on your knuckles. Inhale deeply and let your belly drop, arching your back gently, lifting your gaze without cranking your neck. Pause for 1 second. Exhale fully and round your spine, pulling your belly button toward your spine, tucking your chin. Pause for 1 second. Repeat this cycle 10 to 15 times, moving only as far as feels comfortable, never forcing the range. Do this once in the morning, once before bed. If your knees are sensitive, fold a towel under them. If getting down to the floor feels risky, start with a modified version standing against a wall, placing your hands on the wall at shoulder height and rounding and arching your spine in the same rhythm. The mistake most people make is rushing the movement or pushing into pain. This is not a stretch you conquer. It's a conversation with your spine. You're asking it to remember a range it used to own. Be patient. The results compound over weeks, not days. And here's the hidden benefit no one talks about. Cat-cow improves your breathing mechanics. When you arch your spine and lift your chest, your ribcage expands and your diaphragm has room to descend fully. When you round your spine, you're training. A complete exhale, which most people over 60 have lost the ability to do because shallow breathing becomes the default over decades. Better breathing means better oxygenation, lower stress hormones, and improved sleep. All from 2 minutes on the floor. Now let's move to the third movement, and this one targets the part of your body that determines whether you stay independent or become reliant on others, your hips. In Japanese, this practice is called sumo squat stretching, though it's more accurately a deep squat hold that opens the hips, lengthens the adductors, and trains the balance reflexes that prevent falls. You stand with your feet wider than hip width, toes turned out slightly. You lower yourself into a deep squat, as low as your hips and ankles allow, and you hold that position, hands together at your chest or resting on your thighs, while you breathe slowly. For most people over 60 in the West, this position is impossible. Ankles too stiff, hips too tight, balance too shaky. But in traditional Japanese communities, people squat to rest, to work in gardens, to talk with neighbors. The position is as natural as sitting in a chair, and the people who maintain that ability show dramatically lower rates of hip fractures, fewer mobility limitations, and better overall independence in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Here's why your hips matter more than you think. Your hip joint is a ball and socket, designed for an enormous range of motion. But when you sit in chairs all day, walk on flat surfaces, and never load your hips in deep flexion, the capsule around the joint tightens. The muscles that stabilize the joint, your glutes, your deep rotators, your adductors, stop firing efficiently. The result is a hip that feels locked, a gait that becomes stiff and shuffling, and a vulnerability to falls that increases every year. The fix isn't hip replacement surgery, though that's often where people end up. The fix is restoring the range your hips were designed to use. Research from biomechanics labs studying aging populations finds that people who can perform a full, deep squat without support have significantly better balance scores, faster walking speeds, and greater confidence in dynamic environments like crowded sidewalks or uneven trails compared to those who cannot squat below parallel. The squat position challenges every system involved in stability. Your ankles, your knees, your hips, your core, your vestibular system, and your proprioceptors all have to coordinate to keep you upright. When you practice that coordination daily, you're essentially running a systems check on the machinery that keeps you from falling. Let me tell you about Linda, 65, a retired teacher from Michigan. She couldn't squat below chair height without holding on to something, and even then she felt like she might tip backward. Her physical therapist told her it was normal aging. I told her it was reversible. We started with a supported squat, holding onto a sturdy countertop, lowering only as far as she could while keeping her heels down. She held it for 10 seconds, 3 times a day. Every few days, she went an inch lower. Every week, she relied a little less on the counter. Within 6 weeks, she could squat all the way to the floor with one hand lightly touching the counter. Within 3 months, she was squatting with no support, staying down for 30 seconds, even swaying side to side to deepen the stretch. Linda now squats every morning while she waits for her tea to steep. She says her hips feel looser than they did in her 50s, and she started hiking trails she'd written off years ago. Here's how you start. Stand next to a kitchen counter or a sturdy chair. Place your feet slightly wider than shoulder width, toes angled out about 30 degrees. Hold the counter lightly with both hands. Shift your weight into your heels and begin to sit back and down, as if aiming for a very low stool. Keep your chest lifted, your spine long. Go only as low as you can while keeping your heels on the ground. If your heels lift, stop there. Hold for 5 to 10 seconds, breathing slowly. Stand up, rest for a few breaths, repeat 2 more times. Do this twice a day. Every week, try to go an inch lower. If your ankles are tight, place a small rolled towel or yoga mat under your heels to give yourself a slight lift. That modification lets your hips do the work while your ankles catch up. If your knees feel unstable, widen your stance and turn your toes out more. If balance is the issue, keep holding the counter until your confidence builds. The goal is not to rush into a full squat. The goal is to teach your body that deep hip flexion is safe, available, and functional. And here's the bonus. The deep squat position is one of the most effective natural digestive aids you'll ever find. The compression of your abdomen in a deep squat, combined with the upright posture and relaxed breathing, stimulates peristalsis and can help relieve constipation, a common issue for people over 60. Traditional cultures have known this for centuries. The modern toilet stole this benefit from us. 5 minutes in a deep squat a few times a week can restore it. Which brings us to the 4th movement. And this is where things get interesting. Up until now, we've worked on mobility and basic stability. Now, we're adding a coordination challenge that most people assume is beyond them. But here's the truth. Your nervous system doesn't age the way your joints do. Your brain's ability to learn new movement patterns and refine balance stays remarkably plastic well into your 80s and 90s, as long as you keep challenging it. This movement is called tandem walking, and in Japan, it's a daily practice for people who want to prevent falls and maintain independence. Tandem walking means walking in a straight line with one foot directly in front of the other, heel to toe, as if you're walking on a tightrope. It sounds simple. It's not. This movement pattern forces your brain to integrate input from your eyes, your inner ear, and the proprioceptors in your feet and ankles in real time. It challenges your core stabilizers to keep you upright while your base of support narrows to almost nothing. And it reveals imbalances and weaknesses in your gait that normal walking hides. Most people over 60 have lost the ability to walk tandem for more than a few steps. Not because they're weak, but because they're unsteady. And that unsteadiness is one of the strongest predictors of fall risk. When researchers test balance in aging populations, tandem walking is one of the gold standard assessments. People who can walk 10 steps heel to toe without wobbling or stepping out have fall rates a fraction of those who cannot. The good news is that tandem walking is a skill you can train, and improvements happen fast. Studies from geriatric rehabilitation programs show that older adults who practice tandem walking for just 2 minutes a day, 5 days a week, show measurable improvements in balance confidence and gait stability within 4 weeks. The mechanism is neuroplasticity. Every time you challenge your balance, your brain strengthens the pathways that coordinate movement and stability. Every time you succeed at a slightly harder variation, your nervous system updates its map of what's possible. This isn't about building muscle. This is about rewiring the control system. Let me tell you about Frank, 71, a retired pilot from Arizona. He'd fallen twice in 6 months, once on a hiking trail and once in his own garage. Both times he caught himself, but barely. His confidence was shot. He stopped hiking, stopped going to the hardware store alone, started second-guessing every step. I asked him to try tandem walking for me. He made it 3 steps before he had to put his arms out and widen his stance. I told him that was perfect, because now we had a baseline. We practiced tandem walking every day for 2 weeks. He started next to a wall, lightly dragging his fingertips along it for security, not support. He walked 5 steps forward, turned around, walked 5 steps back. 3 sets, once in the morning. By the end of week 1, he didn't need the wall. By the end of week 2, he could walk the length of his hallway without a wobble. By the end of week 4, he was walking tandem on his morning walks, just 20 steps at a time, but enough to remind his nervous system that balance is a skill, not a fixed trait. Frank hasn't fallen since. He's back on trails, and he told me he feels more confident on his feet now than he did 5 years ago. Here's your protocol. Find a hallway or a clear path next to a wall. Stand with your feet together. Place one foot directly in front of the other, heel touching toe. Walk forward slowly, placing each foot heel to toe in a straight line. If you wobble, touch the wall lightly with your fingertips. Don't grip it, just let it remind you where vertical is. Walk 5 to 10 steps forward, pause, turn around carefully, walk 5 to 10 steps back. Do 3 sets once a day. If this feels too hard, start by walking with your feet on 2 parallel lines, like the edges of a floor tile, narrowing your base without going full tandem. Progress to true heel-to-toe as your confidence builds. The mistake people make is looking down at their feet. That throws off your balance. Instead, pick a spot on the wall at eye level and focus on that while you walk. Your peripheral vision and proprioception will handle your foot placement. Also, don't hold your breath. Breathe slowly and steadily. Breath holding increases tension and makes you more likely to wobble. And here's the hidden benefit. Tandem walking improves your spatial awareness and reaction time. When you practice moving through a narrow base of support, your brain gets better at making micro-adjustments in real time. That skill transfers to every movement you do. Stepping off a curb, reaching for something on a high shelf, turning quickly when someone calls your name, all of those movements become smoother and safer. Now we move to the 5th movement, and this one is going to surprise you because it targets a system most people don't even know they can train. Your vestibular system, the balance organ in your inner ear. In Japan, this practice is called neck and eye coordination training, and it involves slow, deliberate head movements combined with visual tracking. You sit comfortably, spine tall, and you turn your head slowly to the left while keeping your eyes focused on a fixed point straight ahead. Then you turn your head back to center and repeat to the right. Then you tilt your head toward one shoulder, then the other. Then you nod your head up and down. Each movement is slow, controlled, and paired with steady breathing. This might sound too simple to matter, but here's what's happening. Your vestibular system, the organ in your inner ear that detects head movement and position, degenerates with age. The hair cells inside your semicircular canals become less sensitive, and the communication between your inner ear and your brain slows down. The result is dizziness when you stand up too fast, unsteadiness when you turn your head, and a general feeling that the world is less stable than it used to be. Most doctors tell you this is just aging. They're wrong. Your vestibular system responds to training just like any other system in your body. Research from neuro-otology clinics, the specialists who study balance disorders, shows that older adults who perform vestibular training exercises for just 5 minutes a day experience significant reductions in dizziness, improved postural stability, and greater confidence in dynamic environments within 6 to 8 weeks. The exercises work by challenging your brain to integrate conflicting sensory input. When you move your head but keep your eyes fixed, your brain has to reconcile the mismatch. That challenge strengthens the neural pathways that keep you oriented in space. Let me tell you about Diane, 69, a retired nurse from Illinois. She'd been experiencing vertigo for 2 years, the kind that made her feel like the room was spinning every time she bent over or looked up quickly. Her doctor diagnosed her with benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, a condition where tiny calcium crystals in the inner ear get dislodged and confuse the balance system. She tried medication, and it helped a little, but the dizziness never fully went away. I asked her if she'd ever done any vestibular rehab. She said no one had mentioned it. We started with the simplest exercise. She sat in a chair and turned her head slowly left and right, 10 times, twice a day. For the first few days, she felt slightly dizzy during the movements. I told her that was normal, that her brain was recalibrating. By the end of the first week, the dizziness during the exercise was gone. By the end of the second week, her spontaneous vertigo episodes started to space out. By the end of 6 weeks, she hadn't had a vertigo attack in over a month. Diane still does her vestibular exercises every morning, now with more advanced variations like head turns while walking. She says she feels steady in a way she didn't think was possible anymore. Here's your protocol. Sit in a sturdy chair with your feet flat on the floor. Pick a spot on the wall in front of you at eye level. Keep your eyes on that spot. Turn your head slowly to the left. Hold for 2 seconds. Return to center. Turn your head slowly to the right. Hold for 2 seconds. Return to center. Tilt your head toward your left shoulder. Hold for 2 seconds. Return to center. Tilt your head toward your right shoulder. Hold for 2 seconds. Return to center. Nod your head down. Hold for 2 seconds. Return to center. Nod your head up, hold for 2 seconds, return to center. Repeat the full sequence 5 times, once in the morning, once in the evening. If you feel dizzy during any movement, that's a sign that movement is exactly what you need to practice. But slow it down even more and reduce the range. If the dizziness is severe or accompanied by nausea, check with your doctor to rule out an inner ear problem that needs medical treatment. For most people, mild dizziness during vestibular training is normal and improves quickly with consistent practice. And here's the bonus. These exercises also reduce neck tension and improve cervical mobility. The slow, controlled movements through your neck's full range keep the joints and muscles healthy, which reduces headaches and improves your ability to check blind spots when driving. It's a small movement with a big return. Now we arrive at the 6th and final movement, and this is the one that ties everything together. In Japan, this practice is called deep breathing with postural holds, and it's the single most important movement for cardiovascular resilience, stress management, and longevity. You stand tall, feet hip-width apart, arms relaxed at your sides. You inhale slowly through your nose for a count of 4, filling your belly first, then your chest. At the top of the inhale, you pause for 2 seconds. Then you exhale slowly through your nose for a count of 6, emptying your chest first, then your belly. At the bottom of the exhale, you pause for 2 seconds. You repeat this cycle for 2 to 3 minutes while maintaining perfect posture, shoulders back, chest open, core gently engaged. This is not just breathing. This is a full-body nervous system reset. The slow, rhythmic breath pattern activates your vagus nerve, the primary nerve of your parasympathetic nervous system, which controls rest, digestion, and recovery. The extended exhale, longer than the inhale, shifts your autonomic nervous system out of fight-or-flight mode and into a state of calm alertness. The postural hold, standing tall with your chest open, improves lung capacity by giving your diaphragm room to move fully. And the mental focus required to count your breath and maintain your posture quiets the default mode network in your brain, the mental chatter that generates anxiety and rumination. Studies on breathwork and aging consistently show that people who practice slow, Diaphragmatic breathing for just a few minutes daily experience lower blood pressure, reduced levels of stress hormones like cortisol, improved heart rate variability, which is a marker of cardiovascular health, and better sleep quality compared to those who breathe shallowly and rapidly. The mechanism is direct. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system you can consciously control, and when you breathe slowly and deeply, you send a signal to your brain that you are safe. That signal cascades through every system in your body. Let me tell you about George, 73, a retired engineer from Texas. He'd had high blood pressure for 10 years, managed with medication, but his numbers were still creeping up. His doctor wanted to add a second drug. George hated the side effects from the first one. I asked him about his stress levels. He said he was fine, but his jaw was clenched when he said it, and his breathing was shallow and fast. I taught him the deep breathing protocol and asked him to do it every morning for 3 minutes before breakfast. Within 2 weeks, he noticed he felt calmer during the day. Within 4 weeks, his home blood pressure readings started to drop. Within 8 weeks, his doctor reduced his medication dose. Within 6 months, George's blood pressure was better controlled than it had been in 5 years, and he'd lost the afternoon fatigue that had plagued him for years. He told me the breathing practice was the easiest thing he'd ever done and the most effective. George now does his breathing practice twice a day, morning and evening, and he's added the other 5 movements into his routine. He says he feels younger at 73 than he did at 65. Here's your protocol. Stand tall, feet hip-width apart, or sit in a chair if standing feels unstable. Place one hand on your belly and one hand on your chest. Inhale slowly through your nose for 4 seconds, feeling your belly rise first, then your chest. Pause for 2 seconds. Exhale slowly through your nose for 6 seconds, feeling your chest fall first, then your belly. Pause for 2 seconds. Repeat this cycle for 2 to 3 minutes. Do this once in the morning when you wake up, once in the evening before bed. If counting feels distracting, just focus on making your exhale longer than your inhale. If nose breathing is difficult due to congestion, breathe through your mouth but keep the same slow rhythm. The mistake people make is breathing into their chest only, which is shallow breathing. You want your belly to move more than your chest. That means your diaphragm is doing the work, which is the most efficient and calming way to breathe. Also, don't force the breath. If 6 seconds on the exhale feels too long, start with 4 and build up over time. The key is to stay relaxed and rhythmic. And here's the hidden benefit. This breathing practice improves your oxygen efficiency, which means your cells get more usable oxygen from each breath. That translates to better energy, better mental clarity, and better recovery from physical activity. It also trains your diaphragm, which is a muscle that weakens with age and shallow breathing. A strong diaphragm supports your core, protects your lower back, and even improves your voice projection and digestion. All from a practice that requires no equipment, no space, and no risk. So, let's review the 6 movements because the power is in the sequence. First, Seiza, the kneeling position that restores joint mobility and core stability. Second, cat-cow, the spinal wave that feeds your discs and unlocks chronic stiffness. Third, the deep squat hold that opens your hips and prevents falls. Fourth, tandem walking that rewires your balance and coordination. Fifth, neck and eye coordination that trains your vestibular system and reduces dizziness. Sixth, deep breathing with postural holds that resets your nervous system and builds cardiovascular resilience. Each movement takes between 1 and 3 minutes. The full sequence takes less than 15 minutes. You can do all 6 in one session, or you can split them up throughout the day. Morning Seiza and breathing. Midday cat-cow and squat. Evening tandem walk and vestibular training. The structure matters less than the consistency. These movements work because you do them daily, because they're cumulative, and because they address the systems that determine whether you stay independent and vital or decline into fragility and dependence. Here's the thing most people miss. Aging is not a linear descent. It's a series of tipping points. You lose a little ankle mobility, so you start shuffling. The shuffle weakens your balance, so you fall. The fall scares you, so you move less. Moving less accelerates muscle loss, stiffens your joints, weakens your heart, and spirals you into frailty. But the cascade runs in reverse too. You restore a little mobility, so you move more confidently. The confidence encourages you to challenge yourself, so your nervous system adapts. The adaptation improves your stability, your strength, your energy, and your independence. The 6 movements you just learned are the leverage points that reverse the spiral, and you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to hold Seiza for 5 minutes or squat ass to grass or walk a tandem tightrope on your first try. You need to show up, practice with patience, and trust the process. Your body remembers how to move. It's been waiting for permission to remember. These 6 movements are that permission. One more thing. The Japanese approach to longevity isn't about heroic effort or extreme discipline. It's about small, sustainable practices woven into daily life. The people in Okinawa who live to 100 don't go to gyms. They move naturally, throughout the day, in ways that feel easy because they've been doing them for decades. You're starting later, but the principle is the same. Make these movements so automatic that you do them without thinking. Seiza while you watch the news. Cat-cow when you get out of bed. Deep breathing while you wait for your coffee. Squat while you talk on the phone. Tandem walk while you check the mail. Vestibular training while you sit at the kitchen table. Movement doesn't have to be a separate event. It can be the texture of your day. And here's the ultimate benefit. The one that never shows up in studies, but every person who commits to this practice eventually feels. These movements give you your body back. Not the body you had at 30, but a body that feels capable, responsive, trustworthy. A body that doesn't betray you when you stand up too fast or reach for something on a high shelf or play with your grandkids on the floor. A body that lets you live the life you want instead of the life your limitations dictate. So here's my final question for you, and I want you to comment with your answer. Which of these 6 movements will you start with today? And what's the one thing you're most looking forward to being able to do again once you've rebuilt your mobility and confidence? Tell me your story. I want to hear where you're starting and where you're headed. Because the truth is, it's never too late. Your nervous system is still plastic. Your joints still have range. Your muscles still respond to stimulus. And your future self is waiting for you to take the first step. Or, in this case, the first kneel, the first breath, the first tandem walk. Start today. Start small. Start now.